You are not living in the world. I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, so let me say it more plainly. You are living inside a handful of sentences about the world, sentences you did not write, sentences you have never once sat down and reviewed. And everything you see and everything that happens to you arrives already interpreted by them before you get anywhere near it. Here is what I mean. Two people receive exactly the same piece of news on the same afternoon. One of them is devastated by it. It confirms everything they have always suspected about how life treats them, and it takes them weeks to recover. The other person hears the identical news, and it barely touches them. They think about it for an hour, and then they think about something else. Nothing about the event was different. The words were the same. The circumstances were the same. The only thing that differed was the sentence underneath it. That sentence is a belief, and you are carrying several of them right now, quietly, the way you carry your own accent. You do not hear it. Everybody else does. It has been shaping the sound of everything you say for as long as you can remember, and you have never once noticed it, because it is simply how things sound to you. Now, I am not going to ask you to change 100 things today. That is what most people attempt, and it is exactly why most people fail. They try to renovate the entire house at once, and they collapse from exhaustion in the second week, and then they decide that they are the problem. I am going to ask you to find one belief, one, because beliefs are not stored separately in tidy little compartments. They hold each other up. And when you pull one thread, particularly a load-bearing one, the whole pattern it was holding in place begins to come loose everywhere at once in areas you were not even working on. That is not a promise I am making to be encouraging. It is simply what happens, and by the end of this you will understand the mechanism well enough to see why it must happen. So, one belief, let us go and find yours. I want to begin with something that startles most people when they first hear it, and then makes a great deal of sense once they sit with it. Most of us formed the ideas we believe about life by the time we were about 5 years old. 5. We added a little bit more as teenagers, when we were busy being certain about everything. And then perhaps a tiny bit more later on, but very little, astonishingly little. If I ask somebody why they believe a particular thing about money, or about love, or about whether they are the sort of person good things happen to, and we trace it back together, patiently, we nearly always arrive at a decision they made at a very young age, usually in a single moment. Usually in a room they can still picture. So think about what that actually means. You are a grown person with a grown person's responsibilities and a grown person's understanding of the world. And you are running your life on conclusions drawn by a 5-year-old who had almost no information, could not evaluate evidence, had never left their own neighborhood, and was doing their absolute best to make sense of the behavior of enormous, confusing people who did not explain themselves. We are living inside the limitations of a 5-year-old's consciousness. And underneath that, we are living inside our parents' consciousness, because that is where the 5-year-old got the material. Now, I want to be careful here, because this is where people start reaching for blame, and blame is a dead end. Even the most wonderful parents in the world did not know everything. They had their own limitations, inherited from their own parents who had theirs. Nobody handed anybody a clean slate. Your parents were transmitting what had been transmitted to them, often without ever examining it, because nobody had suggested to them that it could be examined, and you absorbed it perfectly. That is the part I want you to understand. You were not a bad student. You were an excellent one. Children respond to the mental atmosphere around them. They do not filter. They do not think, well, mother is having a difficult week, so I shall discount this remark. They take it in whole, and they take it in as truth, because at that age the adults are the truth. So if you grew up in a house where nobody was allowed to be angry, You are probably frightened of anger and of confrontation, and you swallow things and let them sit in your body. If you grew up in a house where everybody was managed by guilt, then you are probably an adult who apologizes constantly, who cannot ask for anything directly, and who has to arrange things sideways in order to get what you want. If you grew up hearing that money is difficult and that people like us do not get those opportunities, you have very likely spent your adult life quietly proving it and calling it realism. You learned exactly what you were taught. They were very good teachers, and you were a very good student. Congratulations. And now it is time to begin thinking for yourself. Because here's the thing about inherited beliefs. Some of them are excellent. Please do not throw everything out. Look both ways before you cross the road. That one has served you well. Fresh food is good for your body. Keep it. Say thank you when somebody helps you. Wonderful. There is a great deal you were given that is nourishing and true and that you should carry with gratitude. The trouble is not that you have beliefs. Everybody has beliefs. The trouble is that some of them had a shelf life and it has expired and nobody sent you a notice. Do not trust strangers is very sensible advice for a small child walking to school. It keeps them safe. But if you carry that same instruction into your 50s, unexamined, what you have is not safety. What you have is isolation and loneliness, defended as caution. Be quiet and do not make a fuss. May have been genuinely necessary in a volatile house. It may have protected you, but as an adult it becomes a life in which nobody knows what you actually want, including you. So there is nothing wrong with the belief that it was once, it did its job. It simply stayed on long after the job ended, like an employee nobody remembered to let go. Now let me give you the words to listen for, because beliefs rarely announce themselves as beliefs. They arrive disguised as facts. I can't, it won't work, there isn't enough money, I'm not young enough, I'm not old enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not the right sort of person, I don't have the education for that. Nobody in my family has ever done that. And the great one, the one that has stopped more lives than any other, what would people think? That last one is such a convenient obstacle because it does not require any effort at all. Now, you do not have to do the thing, and it is not even your fault. They would not approve. They would think it was strange. And so you stay exactly where you are, protected by the imagined opinion of people who I promise you are thinking about themselves, and what people think changes anyway. It changes every decade. Half the things your grandparents would have been scandalized by are completely unremarkable now. So you have organized your one life around a standard that is not even stable. The moment you say, I can't, you have put a stop sign in front of yourself. You have closed the door on your own inner wisdom, and you have blocked the flow of the very thing that might have shown you a way through. I know all of this from the inside, by the way. I did not read it somewhere. I left school early. I was a high school dropout, and for many, many years I carried a very specific sentence about that. I would say it out loud to people. I have no education. I can't think properly. I can't get a good job. I can't do anything really well, and I believed it completely. It was not a mood I was in. It was a fact about the universe, as far as I was concerned, as solid as the furniture. And then one day I realized that the limitation was entirely in my mind. It had nothing whatsoever to do with reality. There was no law anywhere that said what I could and could not learn. There was a decision made a long time ago by a frightened girl that had simply never been reviewed. When I put that belief down, I discovered that I could think. I discovered I was actually rather bright. I discovered I could communicate with people and that people wanted to listen. All sorts of possibilities opened up that from inside the old limitation had looked absolutely impossible. They had been there the whole time. I simply could not see them from where I was standing. And that is what I mean when I say a belief is not an opinion you hold, it is the room you are standing in. It determines what is visible. So say this with me and notice how it sits. I am willing to go beyond the limitations I was given. Again, I am willing to go beyond the limitations I was given. Now, which one is yours? Because there is a way to find it, and it takes about 60 seconds. And I will tell you honestly that you are not going to enjoy it. Here is the fastest way to find your core belief. Say something loving about yourself out loud, and then listen to what argues back. That is it. That is the whole technique. It is almost insultingly simple, and it works every single time, because a belief cannot stay hidden the moment you contradict it. It has to come forward and defend itself. So go and stand in front of a mirror at some point today and say, I love and approve of myself, and then be quiet and listen. Because something will answer. It might say, who do you think you are? It might say, you don't though. It might say, this is ridiculous. It might say, you would if you had actually done something with your life. It might say, not after what you did. It might simply be a wave of embarrassment with no words attached, which is a very old feeling, wearing a very thin disguise. Whatever comes back at you, in whatever tone of voice, that is it. That is the belief. You just met it. It has been running your life from underneath for 30 or 40 years, choosing your relationships, setting your income, deciding what you thought you were allowed to want, and it has never once had to say itself out loud until this moment. Now, most people hear that voice and conclude that the exercise is not working. They feel silly and they stop. And what they have actually done is get the answer and then throw it away. Because that objection is not the obstacle. That objection is the treasure. You cannot change what you cannot see. You cannot put down what you do not know you are holding. And that voice has just handed you, free of charge, in plain language, the exact sentence you have been organizing your life around. That is not a bad day. That is a diagnosis. And you cannot treat anything until you have one. Now, in my experience, these beliefs are less varied than people expect. Underneath almost everything, you tend to find one of four things: criticism, fear, guilt, resentment. And when people finally get to the sentence itself, it is usually a version of one of these. I am not enough. I do not deserve good things. It is not safe to be me. People always leave. If I am not useful, I will not be loved. Something will always go wrong. You may have your own particular wording, and the wording matters, so do not let me put words in your mouth. But you will recognize the family it belongs to. And if the mirror is too much for you today, there are other ways in. Let me give you three. The first one, take a complaint you have made more than once this year. Something you find yourself saying about your life in more or less the same words to different people. Now ask what would have to be true for that complaint to make sense. If your complaint is that nobody ever helps you, the assumption underneath is that you must not ask. And underneath that is usually a belief that asking makes you a burden. And underneath that is a belief about what happens to people who need things. Follow it down. Do not stop at the first answer. The first answer is always about somebody else. Keep going until you arrive at a sentence about you. The second one, look at your life exactly as it is, without judging it, and ask this: what would a person have to believe in order to build this? Not what went wrong. What would somebody have to be quietly certain of in order to end up here making these particular choices, tolerating these particular things, declining these particular opportunities? That question is uncomfortable, and it is extremely fast. The third one, notice where your ceiling is. Everybody has one. There is a level of good that you are comfortable with, and just above it there is a line. And when things go better than the line, you do something. You sabotage it a little. You get suspicious. You start waiting for the other shoe. You find a flaw in it so that you can relax again. That line is not a coincidence. That line is the exact height of your belief about what you are entitled to. Find the line and you have found the sentence. Now, I need to say something here about responsibility, because this is precisely the point where people take a wrong turn, and the wrong turn is very costly. When I say your beliefs have shaped your experience, some people immediately hear an accusation. They hear, "This is your fault." And then they take the whole thing and turn it into another stick to beat themselves with, which is simply the old belief finding a new use for the new information. So let me be extremely clear. There is an enormous difference between responsibility and blame. Blame is about giving your power away. Blame looks outward and it says, they did this to me and therefore only they can undo it, and until they do, I must wait. It feels like strength because it is often loud, but it leaves you completely helpless. You have handed the controls to somebody who is not even in the room. Responsibility is not about fault at all. Responsibility is simply your ability to respond. It is the acknowledgement that you are a participant in your own life and that there is something you can do from here. That is the entire meaning of it. Not, I deserve this. Not, I should have known better. Simply, I am here and I have a move. And I want to say plainly, because this matters, that taking responsibility for how you go forward does not mean you caused everything that ever happened to you. Some of you were children in situations no child should be in. That was not yours. I know something about this. My own childhood was violent, and I was starved of affection. And for years afterwards, I kept recreating those same experiences without any idea that I was doing it. What I could not see at the time was that I had drawn a conclusion in that house. The conclusion was that I must be a bad person, because that was the only way a child could explain the absence of love. And I carried that conclusion out of the house with me at 15, and it went everywhere I went, and it chose everything for me. Nobody was responsible for that conclusion arriving, but I was the only person alive who could review it. That is the distinction. And once you have it, guilt drops away, because guilt is useless here. Guilt is just another limitation. It keeps you locked out of anything good, and it has nothing to do with who you actually are. So say this with me now. I am willing to see what has been holding me back, and this one, which is the harder of the two, whatever I find, I will not use it against myself. Now you have it. You have your sentence. Do not try to destroy it. That never works, and I will explain why in a moment, because what you do next is the entire difference between another interesting realization and an actual change. You do not remove a belief, you replace it. I want to spend a moment on why, because almost everybody's instinct is wrong here. And the wrong instinct costs people years. The instinct is to fight it, to argue with the belief, to catch yourself thinking, I'm not enough, and then to say, no, stop it, that's not true, don't think that. And what have you just done? You have said the sentence again. You have thought about it more carefully than you did before. You have given it your full attention several times with feeling. Your mind cannot follow a prohibition. It has no ability to picture an absence. If I tell you not to think about a red door, the door appears immediately, and you cannot help it. That is not a weakness in you. That is simply how the machinery works. So every time you fight a belief, you rehearse it. You are watering the very thing you are trying to pull up. The mind can only follow a direction. So we give it one. This is why we do not begin by getting rid of the old sentence. We begin by planting a new one right beside it. And then we feed the new one every day. And eventually the new one takes the light and the water and the ground, and the old one simply has nowhere left to grow. You do not evict it, you crowd it out. So let us build your new sentence. And there are only a few rules, but they matter. The first rule, make it positive. Not a no, not I will stop being afraid, not I am no longer the person who gives up. Every one of those contains the thing you are leaving, which means you will be thinking about the thing you are leaving all day long. Instead, say what is true in the direction you are going. I am safe. I follow through with ease. I trust myself. The second rule, present tense, not I will deserve good things one day. One day is not a place. One day never arrives, and your mind knows it, and it will file the sentence under things that are not happening. Say it as it is now, even though it does not feel true yet. Especially because it does not feel true yet. That is not lying to yourself. That is planting a seed, and a seed is not a lie simply because there is no plant there this morning. The third rule, make it about you. You cannot affirm your way into controlling another person, and you should not try. To say, this particular person now loves me, is an attempt to run somebody else's life, and it tends to come straight back at you. You do not know what another person's lesson is, and you would not want somebody doing it to you. So do not name a person. Name the quality. Say, I am now loved by a wonderful person who is kind and steady and honest with me. And then leave the casting to life, which is better at it than you are, and which may very well surprise you. The same is true of other people's health or other people's choices. If somebody is unwell, send them love and peace. Do not stand over them demanding that they change on your schedule. Now, take the exact objection you found earlier, the precise words that came back at you in the mirror, and write its opposite. Let me do a few with you so you can hear the shape of it. If what came back was, you don't deserve that, then your sentence is this: I now deserve all good. I allow good experiences to fill my life. If what came back was some version of, it isn't safe to be me, then your sentence is, it is safe to be me. I express who I am, and I am safe. If it was, I am not enough, then I am good enough exactly as I am. I love and approve of myself. If it was, people always leave, then I am worthy of love, and I am surrounded by loving people wherever I go. If it was, something always goes wrong, then I trust the process of life. All I need is always taken care of. If it was about money, and it usually is for somebody listening, then I prosper wherever I turn, and my good comes to me from expected and unexpected sources. Do you notice that in every case the new sentence is not enormous? It is not, I am about to become extraordinary. It is quiet. It is almost ordinary. That is deliberate. A sentence you can half believe on a bad Tuesday will do far more for you than a magnificent one you can only manage when you are already feeling well. I will tell you the ones I chose for myself many years ago and have kept ever since. Not so that you take mine, but so you can hear how plain they are. Everything I need to know is revealed to me. Everything I need comes to me in the perfect time and space sequence. I am willing to change and to grow. Life is a joy, and it is filled with love. I am safe, and all is well in my world. That last one has carried me through more than I can tell you. It is 6 words. There is nothing clever about it. I made those into personal laws. That is the word I use, and I use it deliberately. Not hopes, not preferences, laws. Things I have simply decided are true in my universe, in the same way that you have decided, without ever thinking about it, that things generally work out badly, or that people generally cannot be relied upon. You already run your life on unexamined laws. All I am suggesting is that you get to write one of them yourself, on purpose for the first time. Now here is my instruction, and I would like you to actually follow it rather than admire it. Choose one, not a list, not 7 written out beautifully on a card. One sentence which you are going to carry for the next month. I know the temptation. The temptation is to want all of them because all of them sound good, and choosing feels like giving something up. But a person carrying 7 sentences is carrying none of them. They are carrying a project, and projects get abandoned, whereas a single sentence you can say in a lift, in the car, in the 4 seconds before you walk into a difficult room is something you will actually use. One belief, chosen on purpose, repeated until it stops sounding like somebody else's line and starts sounding like your own voice. Now, how do you know if you have chosen the right one? There is a very reliable test, and it is not the one people expect. People assume the right sentence is the one that feels good. It is usually not. The right sentence is the one that makes something in you flinch slightly. If you say it and you feel nothing at all, pleasant and neutral, like reading a greetings card, then you have most likely chosen something safe, something that was never really in dispute. You can affirm that the sky is blue all week and nothing will happen because no part of you was ever arguing about the sky. But if you say it and something tightens, or you feel a bit embarrassed, or you find you cannot quite look at yourself while you say it, then you have found the live one. That small flinch is the old belief registering that it has been contradicted. That is exactly the sentence you want. Uncomfortable is the correct feeling. Uncomfortable means you are actually touching the thing. And then there is the question of how you carry it, because a sentence you say once in the morning and then abandon for 14 hours is not really a practice. Keep it in the present tense and keep it short. If you cannot say the whole thing in one breath, it is too long, and you will not use it in the moment you most need it. The moments you most need it are brief and inconvenient. You will be walking into a room, or about to make a telephone call you have been putting off, or standing in a kitchen at 11 at night when the old thought arrives. You want something you can reach for in 4 seconds? Sing it, if that helps you. I am quite serious about that. Make a little tune out of it, a silly one, and it will repeat itself in your head all day without you having to do anything at all. The mind loves a jingle. Advertisers have known that for 100 years, and they have used it to sell you things you did not need. You may as well use the same mechanism on your own behalf. Write it down, too, on a card by the kettle, on the bathroom mirror, on the screen of your telephone, so that it is the first thing you see 40 times a day. You are not being sentimental. You are simply placing the new sentence where the old one used to be unopposed. And if the sentence is too much for you to swallow whole, then soften the front of it rather than abandoning it. I am willing to believe that I deserve good things. I am open to the possibility that it is safe to be me. Willingness is always available, even on days when belief is not. And willingness works. It is a smaller door, but it opens onto the same room, so choose it now. Genuinely, do not wait until the end of this. And then say it out loud, once, wherever you are. Say it again, and a third time, and this time notice whatever argued back, because it will have argued. And simply say the sentence again on top of it. That is the whole practice, and you have just done it. Now watch what happens the second week. Now let me tell you what actually happens after you plant it, because I do not want you to be surprised, and I do not want you to mistake the normal process for failure. An affirmation is a seed. That is not a poetic way of putting it. It is a fairly exact description. When you put a seed into the ground, you do not get a plant the following morning. And you certainly do not dig it up every afternoon to see how it is coming along, because if you do that, it dies, and then you will be entirely convinced that seeds do not work and that people who talk about gardens are fooling themselves. You water it, and you allow the growing season to be as long as the growing season is. I like to think of it as placing an order in the cosmic kitchen. You walk into a restaurant, you sit down, and you give your order to the waiter. And then what do? You talk to whoever you came with, you drink your water, you eat a bit of bread. What you do not do is follow the waiter into the kitchen to make certain the chef received it correctly. You do not stand over the stove supervising. You do not ask every 4 minutes whether it has started yet and whether the chef is really trying. You assume it is being prepared. It is on order. It is happening. And that assumption is not laziness. That assumption is trust. And trust is the actual mechanism. It is not decoration on top of the technique. It is the technique. And if what eventually arrives is not what you asked for, you are perfectly entitled to send it back and order again, more clearly this time. Perhaps you were not clear. Perhaps you ordered while apologizing for taking up a table, which a great many people do. Now, about repetition, because repetition is where this is won or lost. Think of your thoughts as drops of water. One thought is one drop. It means almost nothing at all. You could dismiss it entirely and nothing would come of it. But you do not think a thought once. You think it again and again and again for years, usually in the same words, usually in the same tone of voice. And drop by drop, first there is a stain, then a small puddle, then a pond, then a lake, and eventually there is an entire ocean. You have already built one. Every person listening to this has already built one, and built it without any effort, without a plan, and without ever deciding to. So the only real question is what kind of ocean it is. Is it polluted and toxic and unfit to swim in, or is it clear and blue, and would you actually want to get into it? And here is the encouraging part. So do not rush past it. The same mechanism that built the old ocean is the one that will build the new one. It is not a different process. It is the identical process pointed somewhere else. You are not learning a new skill at your age. You are an expert already. You have been running this exact operation without supervision your entire life. Nobody had to teach you how to repeat a sentence 10,000 times until it became the ground you stand on. The only thing that is changing is the content. Now, the resistance. I promised you it would come, and it will, usually around day 3. You will say your sentence and something will go, oh, please. It will say, this is not doing anything. It will say, you have been saying that for a week and nothing has changed. It will say, other people can do this, but you know what you're actually like. Do not be discouraged by that, and do not argue with it either. Convert it. Whatever it says becomes your next line of work. That voice is not interrupting the process. That voice is the process. Every objection it raises is another piece of the old structure making itself visible so that it can be replaced. Resistance is not the wall. Resistance is the first step of change. When you feel it, you are not off the path. You are precisely on it. And there is something else that will happen further along, and this one catches people badly, so I want to prepare you. You will do good work. Something will genuinely shift. You will feel steadier for a stretch of weeks, and you will think, at last, I have handled that. And then it will come back. Some old situation will arise, or you will find yourself reacting in exactly the old way to something, and you will be flooded with disappointment. You will think, I have not moved at all. I am exactly where I started. You are not. Listen to me. That is not a return. That is a layer. We work on this in layers. You clear one, and you stand on a plateau for a while and think you have finished, and then the next one underneath becomes visible, and it only became visible because you cleared the one above it. And sometimes it is a test rather than a layer. Life brings the old situation round once more so that you can see how you respond to it now. If you jump straight back into the old reaction, that does not make you a failure. It means that particular lesson wants a little more practice. That is all it means. That is genuinely all it means. When I realized that I was not a bad person simply because an old issue had resurfaced, everything became much easier to continue. I learned to say a specific thing to myself, and I recommend it to you. Louise, you are doing very well. Look how far you have come. You just need more practice. And I love you. Put your own name in it. Say it in the moment you would ordinarily have said something cruel. Now let me give you the smallest possible daily practice, because I want this to survive contact with an actual week of your life. 3 things. None of them takes long. The first. In the morning, before the telephone gets hold of you, say your sentence at the mirror, out loud, looking at yourself, not at the sink. The second. Every time the old thought turns up during the day, answer it with your sentence. Not on a schedule. The old thought becomes your reminder, which means the thing that used to defeat you is now the thing that prompts you. It becomes useful. That is a very satisfying reversal, and you will begin to notice it. And the third, which is the one people skip and which matters most, once a day, do one small thing as though the new sentence were already true, because it is what you do after you say the affirmation that counts most. If your sentence is that you deserve good things, then accept the compliment without deflecting it. Order the thing you actually want rather than the cheaper one you do not. Let somebody help you. If your sentence is that it is safe to be you, then say one true thing today that you would normally have swallowed. If your sentence is about prosperity, then handle your money once this week without dread. And look at the number instead of avoiding it. Small, undramatic, nobody will notice. That is what an installed belief actually looks like from the outside on a Tuesday. Say this with me now. I now choose to believe it is becoming easy for me to change. Again. I now choose to believe it is becoming easy for me to change. Do that for a season, and something opens up that has very little to do with the belief you thought you were working on. There is a phrase I learned many years ago from one of my early teachers in New York, and it has stayed with me ever since. He called it the totality of possibilities. I loved it immediately because it gave me somewhere to stand that was outside my own small ideas. Whenever I felt hemmed in, I would say it to myself, and it would remind me that the walls I was looking at were not the edges of the world. They were the edges of what I currently believed. And this is the part I most want you to understand before we finish. When you change one belief, you do not improve one area of your life. That is what everybody expects, and it is not what happens. What happens is that a ceiling disappears, and you had stopped seeing it years ago the way you stopped seeing a door frame you have ducked under every day since you moved in. Let me describe what that looked like for me. When I put down the sentence about having no education, I expected, at most, to feel a little less embarrassed at parties. That was the size of my ambition about it. What actually happened was that I discovered I could think, then that I could write, then that I could stand in front of a room full of people and say something useful to them. Then a life I could not possibly have imagined from inside the old sentence, because from inside the old sentence it was not merely unlikely, it was not visible, it was not on the list of things that existed. The possibilities had been there the entire time, every one of them. I simply could not see them from where I was standing, and I had confused what I could see with what was there. That is what a belief does. It is not an opinion sitting somewhere in your head. It is the room you are standing in, and it decides what is in the room. Have you ever cleared out a cupboard? You take everything out. You find things you have not worn in a decade, and things that were never really you in the first place. You give some away, you throw some out, and then you put back only what you actually use in an order that makes sense. And the strange part is what happens next. The next time you bring something new home, there is room for it. It hangs properly. Before you cleaned it out, anything new had to be forced in sideways between old things that were not doing anything except taking up space. Your mind is exactly the same. We keep bringing in new ideas and jamming them between old beliefs that expired years ago, and then we wonder why nothing settles. Make room. Just one shelf. So let us sit with what becomes possible. I would like you to breathe. Take a slow breath in and let it go, and let your shoulders come down. Now bring your sentence to mind. The one you chose, not mine, yours. And I want you to imagine that it is simply true, not that you are working towards it, that it is a settled fact about your life, as ordinary and unremarkable as your own name, what becomes possible? What is the conversation you would have that you have been not having for years? What is the thing you would stop tolerating quietly, without a scene, simply because a person who believed that would not put up with it? What would you ask for? What would you stop apologizing for? Who would you telephone? What door that you have walked past a great many times and told yourself was not for you, would you simply open and walk through? Take your time, let them come, and notice as they come that not one of these things requires anybody else to change first. Not one of them requires more money or better circumstances or permission from a person who is not going to give it. They were all available today. They were available last year. The only thing that was missing was a sentence. Now, let me say a last honest thing, because I do not want to leave you with something impossible to live up to. You will not stay positive 100% of the time. Nobody does. I certainly do not, and I have been doing this a very long while. There will be days when the old sentence is louder, and days when you forget entirely, and stretches where you will wonder whether any of it is doing anything at all. That is not failure. That is a life. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. You do not have to be a positive person. You have to be a person who is pointed somewhere and who keeps returning to the pointing gently without punishing yourself for having wandered off. Be kind to yourself in this. Praise every small step. Because if you scold yourself for the backward ones, the whole thing becomes oppressive and nobody continues doing something that punishes them. So say these with me now, slowly, and mean them a little more than you did half an hour ago. I am willing to change and to grow. Everything I need to know is revealed to me. I love and approve of myself. And this last one, which I would like you to carry out of here. All is well in my world. Once more, all is well in my world. Now go and choose your sentence, if you have not already, and say it the next time you pass a mirror. One belief, not 10. One carried faithfully for a month. Because the life you are living right now is being held in place by a sentence somebody handed you before you were old enough to read. You are old enough now. Write your own. And so it is.
Click the first link in the description and watch the free healing presentation, where you will learn how to truly heal from the root and finally stop piecing your healing together in fragments. This will show you the complete path to heal fully, gently, and deeply from A to Z.